Hello and welcome to the first HaytersTV Transfer Daily Football Show. The 1st of July seems like the perfect opportunity to launch a brand new football show / podcast. I'm Dan Odland, hosting today's show alongside Nick Callow. Welcome, Nick. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, Dan. DJ Danny Luds, as some people call you.
That's how we do. This show, we're really proud to be working in partnership with Retro Football Manager, a fast-growing retro-themed football management app with over 120,000 active users. Dive into over 200 seasons, many with multiple divisions, and relive football history. You can manage the club you support and lead them to glory. Compete with other managers on individual and club leaderboards to find the very best online football managers. Pick any era, manage legendary teams and players, and lead your club to victory. It's absolutely fantastic. All the relevant info and download links are in the description below, so be sure to check it out. Big thanks to Retro Football Manager for getting on board with us. Nick, you enjoying the game?
Yeah, it's absolutely great. I mean, as much as I'm enjoying the current Arsenal team with Mikel Arteta, I'd probably go back to Arsene Wenger days. I don't know if you can see behind, there's a picture of me playing football with Arsene Wenger there at the Arsenal training ground in about early 2000s. And imagine if I could be a manager like him. So, yeah, it's a really good, fun game. Free, what's not to like?
I think that shot's just landed in my back garden, actually. So, all right, so let's get started then. A lot going on in the transfer market as per usual this time of year, dominated by news and rumours. There's only really one place to start. Arsenal look really busy at the moment. So many rumours and different players being linked with the club. The latest is obviously Eberechi Eze, a very exciting talent prospect at Crystal Palace. Where do you think Eze fits in, and do you think he's the right choice?
Yeah, I mean, from the Arsenal supporters and looking at sort of people who sort of are in the know, so to speak. We do know that Eze has been contacted, or his people who have been contacted by Arsenal just to sort of sound him out, what he's interested in, what he would want, how he would fit in. I mean, he came through the ranks at Arsenal, and he's an Arsenal boy, and he talks about how much he cried when they released him. And at 27 now, he's coming into his peak. He's a proven player at the Premier League level. He can play at the left, play on the right, play down the middle. And that's a sort of ultimate Arteta sort of player, isn't it? So versatile. He loves players who can play in different positions. His willingness to play for Arsenal, to play in the Champions League, to be part of the first Arsenal team, to maybe win the league since 2004 must be really enticing for him. My understanding that Tottenham, who have also been linked with him too, are not really as keen as it was initially reported. And also now that they know that Arsenal are in the race and he'd rather go to Arsenal, they're probably not going to put up too much of a fight. But this release clause of 68 million quid is still a lot of money for any player really. But we know with Arsenal they really do not like to pay over the odds, which is what they could be the reason they've missed out on players in the last few years. I think Arsenal are going to go for Eze quite strongly, and still be able to go for other targets too, such as Sesko, Gyökeres, Rodrigo, whoever else you care to be mentioned, Ollie Watkins. Eze now has come up the list quite high. I think he can fit in because he could play left or right, he could play anywhere, and he's got the right attitude, which Arteta and Andrea Berta are absolutely obsessed with.
And what have you made of Berta's sort of early months at the club? First sort of few weeks were quite quiet on the transfer front, but it really seems to have taken off in the last week or two. Deals being done sort of under the radar, which has not always been the Arsenal way, and it's actually proving to be quite effective.
Yeah, I think he seems to be a very thorough, sort of patient man, Berta, and likes to have a few irons in the fire, so he can sort of play clubs off against each other, play players off against each other too. Citing sort of Sesko and Gyökeres perhaps in that department. And apart from just signing new players, keeping the best players too. We've got Miles Lewis-Skelly on a new deal, Gabriel, the defender, on a new long-term deal. It could be that Bukayo Saka gets announced before the start of the season. I expect it will be. And maybe William Saliba as well. And if you get that core of the team signed up in long-term deals when clubs such as Real Madrid are sniffing around for the best talent in the world, then Arsenal are in a very strong position, not only just as on the pitch, but also if they ever need to or want to sell these players, they can get the best price for them. The rumour that's going around about Sesko, who is probably the top pick above Gyökeres because of his age and his potential being younger and a little bit more dynamic, is that his people have been asking for a release clause. So they're basically sort of saying, well, look, he would love to come here. This is how much money he wants. We know Leipzig could put up the transfer fee a bit, so it's all a bit messy. But Arsenal thinking, But if that's the case, are you already planning your next move? Are you looking at us as a stepping stone club so you can go to Real Madrid or Bayern in 2, 3, 4 years' time? Or why would Arsenal be so keen to sign a player who's not even thinking about being committed for the long term? It's just giving them the little bit the jitters, and how that will unravel. I don't know. Only time will tell. We're still, as you say, 1st of July. Arsenal's first sort of big deadline is that pre-season trip to Singapore, where July the 19th. So they want people on the plane going to Asia for the sort of 2 weeks out there. Games against Newcastle, Milan, and Tottenham in Hong Kong. And they want to get that squad gelled together, knowing each other, knowing how to play with each other. And I think that's their first deadline, is to get players on the plane to Asia. And then obviously before the season starts, away to Man United on August the 17th.
Obviously, you'll be there on that Asian tour for us. So
Yes.
stay tuned for all of that behind the scenes and exclusive content to come from that. Arteta has actually come out and said that he wants a striker in place by that tour. So if I had to press you on one of the strikers, who would you pick?
I think it really is this Sesco Gyökeres. It's one of those two. And if they can iron out this supposed release clause thing, they'll go for Sesco as number 1 priority, Gyökeres number 2. Don't rule out Ollie Watkins. I'm not sitting on the fence, but Marcus Rashford. He's probably someone we should talk about, Marcus Rashford. But I think
we'll get on
more
to
like to go abroad. But you know, there's a lot of admiration for Rashford at Arsenal too, but probably not quite enough to put him on the incoming list this summer.
And just a final Arsenal story. We've heard today that reports they've made a bid for Noni Madaweki. He's played a lot under Enzo Maresca, but clearly there's always these links with him leaving the club. So it suggests that not all is well with Madaweki at Chelsea. Is he a player that you like? Is he a player that you can see fitting in well under Mikel Arteta?
Yeah, I think, Madaweki is a sort of player waiting for the right manager to sort of unlock all his sort of ability and potential. Thomas Tuchel obviously likes him because he's picking him regularly for the England squad. Our sort of sometime colleague here, Lewis Bryan, who played in the youth ranks at Crystal Palace with Madueke. I remember when he sort of was coming to, he had come to some prominence with Chelsea sort of last season, and he was saying, I think we were asking him in the studio, what's it like playing against him in training? He said, well, he is one of the best, most difficult opponents I ever faced in all my years, sort of 7 or 8 years he had at Palace, coming through the youth system, played against some really, really good players. And he said he's like Saka, but more two-footed. He could just turn you either way. And I know Bukayo Saka has developed that ability to play on both the left and right foot, but he says Madueke is almost unstoppable and just absolutely frightening to play against. But we've seen a lot of players over the years who've got insane ability and skills and dribbling and two-footed, but if they've got it up here, and Maresca's quite a tough, harsh judge of players. He doesn't suffer fools, does he? I mean, I wouldn't say Madueke will get everyone sort of dancing in the streets of Islington if he signs, but they need someone, and he is someone, so he ticks that box.
I think the frustration among Chelsea fans is that Madaweki is very inconsistent, particularly with his final ball. He's got great feet, amazing trickery, but sometimes when he gets in that position in the final third, he's quite frustrating in the fact that he doesn't always deliver the right pass, the right ball, and can be quite wasteful. So there is that sort of risk that you take with him. Okay, so let's move on to Chelsea now, who are expected to announce the sign of Joao Pedro today from Brighton. Another £60 million going the way of Brighton from Chelsea. I think that takes the total up to nearly 250 million in terms of players that have left Brighton to join Chelsea. And of course, Graham Potter as well, who was manager there a couple of years ago, unsuccessfully. I mean, where do you see Joao Pedro fitting in? I mean, it's an amazing array of attacking talent they've got, but they can only select 2, 3, 4 players at a time, and they've got 10, 11, 12 options now.
Yeah, I mean, we were all sort of laughing at Chelsea this time last year when they were just signing so many players, and we thought about 8 goalkeepers, 12 left backs. You see those sort of mock lineups, fantasy football, like Chelsea with 53 players on the pitch. But Maresca came in, and I was quite impressed the way he dealt with that. Not only from the questions from us in the press of saying, how are you going to sort this squad up? He just sorted it out. He just got rid of so many players. He had sort of an A team and a B team, helped them win that Conference League so easily, got them through to the Champions League. And he was pretty ruthless with players, wasn't he? He was very harsh. If they didn't train properly or do things like he wanted them to, then they were out. I just think that Pedro, he's a good player to watch. Again, he can be a bit frustrating too, but Brazilian, so much ability. They've been very decisive, and they got Delap quickly. They've got Pedro in. I was talking to someone who covers Chelsea very, very closely. Really knows what's going on at Chelsea. He was asked by his editor at the beginning of the summer to list the top 5 players that Maresca wants to sign this summer. And he said to his boss, he goes, I can't do that. He said, why not? He said, well, because Maresca doesn't choose the players that Chelsea sign. He's got very little, if any, say in it whatsoever. So where Maresca fits in Pedro is going to be part down to his coaching skills, which he seems to be quite adept at. I know some Chelsea fans aren't impressed with him, but he seems to have got Chelsea on an upward curve of sorts since he came in, and they're sticking with him. They're buying in more players.
Maresca's brought the best out of a number of players since arriving there, so I think he's another one that he sees with plenty of potential that he can really improve and get the best out of. So I think he's an astute bit of business. Okay, so let's move on to Manchester United. Marcus Rashford has returned to the club today, reports David Ornstein, after his successful spell at Aston Villa. Where do you see his future lying? Ornstein has reported that he will likely move abroad. We've heard interest from PSG in the past. Rashford is an admirer of Barcelona as well, we understand. So where do you see him going? He's obviously at an age now where this is a big move. If he's going to move, this has got to be the move for him if he's going to really progress in his career. How do you see that one playing out?
Well, I mean, whatever David is saying there, I think it has to be respected. David, he did some work experience with us about 100 years ago, or not that, he's too young to be 100 years ago, but when he first started out. And I think the move to Villa did work out well for Rashford. It gave him more game time. People started believing him, and I think he started believing in himself a bit more. Again, he clearly doesn't want to stay at United, and they clearly don't want him to stay either. They need the money, and this is the problem. But Barcelona aren't really in the league to pay 40 million pluses for nominal wages. Paris Saint-Germain have got a load of players like that. They're going to have to do quite a bit of dealing to squeeze him in. Will he and or United accept another loan deal? When push comes to shove, they're going to have to. They want him out of that squad, don't they? So they might have to compromise their demands, and he might have to compromise his wishes. He doesn't. I mean, as you said, he's too old to be just sitting there rotting in the reserves or on the bench and unloved and unwanted and unselected. I'm pretty sure he will go. They'll find a way. It's only the 1st of July. Still plenty of time for deals to be done. I think he will go abroad, yeah, but they'll find a way to get him off the payroll. Yeah,
and just finally, another story that's emerged today is that Harvey Elliott, Liverpool young midfielder, potentially could be offloaded despite his brilliant performances at the Under-21 European Championships, where he scored 5 goals, I think, including in the final. He's obviously a prodigious talent, but it's where he fits in under Arne Slot, I guess, with so much attacking talent there at Liverpool. Is he a player you like, and can you see him staying in the Premier League?
Yeah, I mean, I find it really weird. Yeah, I think of Harvey Elliott as such a sort of classic sort of young Liverpool sort of player. I was watching a bit in the Under-21. So yeah, this is a really good player, and he won player of the tournament, didn't he? But I was reading that he started only 2 games for Liverpool last year. But for me, when I watched Liverpool, and he came on. He always seemed to have an impact when he played. So I'm surprised that they're sort of so open to selling him. I think he's only got 2 years left on his contract, and he is not showing any sign of wanting to extend that, which is, it's what Arsene Wenger said years and years ago. It's not when Arsenal were losing players out of contract. He said, well, this is what is going to happen on football. The top players will realise that they're in a much stronger position if they run their contracts down, of course, unless they really massively want to stay at a club. But they just run their transfer system so well at Liverpool in terms of buying and selling. And they could probably get, 40, 50 million for a player who only started 2 matches last season. That's crazy money. I think it's Liverpool in a sort of win-win situation. They're either going to get a good transfer fee for him, or they're going to have a good player. Okay,
I think that about wraps it up for today. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. This is the first, hopefully, of a long stretch of episodes. It's obviously our first attempt, so do please get in touch and let us know how we can improve. And if there's any other bits and pieces you'd like us to include, we could potentially try and do live shows going forward, so we can include some of your questions, etc. And also, we're working on getting a few guests onto the show as well, which we'll hopefully have more news on soon. As mentioned earlier, please check out in the description below the Retro Football Manager game, which we are partnering with. It's absolutely brilliant. You can go back to any era with any team and relive the glory days. So please check that out in the description. Nick, thank you very much for your time.
Dan, great to see you. Let's do this again tomorrow, next day, all day.
The plan is to, while the off-season remains pretty quiet, we're going to try and get these up daily. So as I say, please let us know if there's anything you'd like to see on the show. And yeah, we'll be back tomorrow. Thank you very much.